Welcome to the European Innovation Council podcast series, where we explore groundbreaking deep tech innovation. In this episode, we're discussing the fresh off the shelf Impact Report, which explores the influence of EIC support. I'm here at a very lively EIC summit in Brussels with an amazing panel who I will let introduce themselves. Bart, would you like to go first?
So I'm Bart Becks. I'm a board member at the EIC, and in terms of background, I ran an internet company called Skynet for about 10 years. Then we built out a European-based media company, moved to Silicon Valley, came back, and today I'm mainly trying to work on building ecosystems. So one of the things that we're working on is Be Central, because it's in the central station of Brussels. It's a 12,000 square meter tech hub that we set up a couple of years ago, and that's fostering an ecosystem, which we do here on the Brussels side, but what we also try to create on the European side. And then I've been investing and working a lot on deep tech.
Hi everyone, my name is Bindi Karia, and I work in the intersection of corporate, startup, investor, and government. So innovation expert, board advisor, NED, and venture partner. By way of background, I was a founding member of the EIC board way back when it launched in late 2017. So I've been really privileged to see the growth and execution of the fund and of the program. And then sort of by proper background, I'm ex-Microsoft Ventures, so running the startup business way back when. Then I went to launch Silicon Valley Bank's entrepreneur banking business unit, which is now known as HSBC Innovation Banking. And then I sit on a lot of boards of corporates and startups and actually startup ecosystem communities. So I've been able to really look at and work with the cross-section of it all. So that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm Camille Bouget, the co-founder and CEO of Scienta Lab, a company that I founded about 4 years ago. At Scienta Lab, we are building an artificial intelligence to decode the complexity of the immune system. And basically the whole idea is to bring better therapeutic options for all patients with chronic immunology and inflammatory pathologies. I arrived there because I have a background in pharmacy, and I used to do marketing in the pharmaceutical industry for this type of drugs. And I really saw a lack of appropriate personalized therapies for these patients, which is why I decided to left my industrial career and launch my own company to really have a stronger impact in the life of these patients.
Fantastic. And I'd also like to point out that Camille is a finalist for the Women Innovators Prize, which is due to be announced at the summit today. Fantastic.
Well done, Camille.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here. And just to point out that since its launch 4 years ago, the EIC has allocated over €6 billion in support for deep tech innovators to over 700 startups and over 500 advanced research projects. So to talk a little bit more about this, Bindi, let's start with you. Is there anything in this EIC Impact Report that surprised you?
I think it's not that it's happened, but more the speed that it's happened, that it's become one of Europe's largest deep tech funds and deep tech investors. And I'm reading the report, and it says 1 billion invested in 272 companies and leveraging €3 for every €1 invested, which I think is fantastic. But actually what's really close to my heart is the diversity statistic. 30% of supported companies were women-led and 20% were female research project coordinators. So I'm looking at you, Camille. And I think what's amazing is when I was on the board, I was a co-chair of the diversity working group, and we wrote a white paper, and I think that was published in 2021, advocating that 25% of the funding should go to female-backed companies or female-based founded companies. And it's great to see it's happened. So for me, that's one of the lovely things to read, that you are definitely putting your money where your mouth is. So thanks for that.
Fantastic, Bindi. And Bart, over to you. As an EIC board member, you are a key individual in advising on the future of the EIC and also on the current EIC. So on reading this report, do you think we're achieving our goals?
Yeah, when I read the report, I'm very happy with the results that we have, and there's a couple of reasons. One of the core goals which we wanted to achieve is what we call the entrepreneur's journey. So bridging faster from research to transition and then to acceleration. And I think we're really achieving that. And that's a key element that was missing. Secondly, is speeding up. I think one of the wasters that we had in the past is that transition between phases from funding a company to scaling it and financing it just took too much time. And the fact that we're accelerating that via a couple of measures, I think that's very beneficial. And what EIC wanted to do is de-risk and invest into domains that were not seen as highly attractive in the past by private investors, because of the long timing it took, because of the research involved, and the fact that we're now getting into the amounts, the numbers that you say, the ×3 that Bindi just mentioned, in terms of additional investors attracted on top of our own investment. I think that's really crucial. And then there's one thing that we don't mention a lot, but which I like a lot, which is the additional support that we give, the BAS, or the additional services. Having been an entrepreneur myself, I know that getting funded and getting accelerated is really great, but getting services to help you in IP, or help you do innovation procurement, or help you to do corporate venturing in a group that increases and that shares more and more, I think that's something amazing, and we're now seeing the acceleration of that effect.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Bart. And a question for you, Camille. The report highlights that the EIC supported numerous patent and company creations for research consortia. Your company uses AI to address immuno-inflammatory diseases. Was your company born in a university laboratory? And if so, why is this type of support important for companies like yours?
So even though Scienta Lab was not directly born out of a lab, we really are deeply integrated into this ecosystem. As I was saying, I'm a pharmacist myself. Both of my partners are engineers, and they led research projects in their past activities. I think for us, the matter is really to stay strongly connected with this ecosystem to maintain scientific excellence. So with our company, for example, we have partnerships with lab on a dual partnership. We also are joining research consortiums, that some of them are funded by Europe. In our case, the government support has been and is still very critical to our success. There is two topics that I want to highlight specifically that has been important for us, and I believe are important for the whole deep tech ecosystem. The first one is the business support, because it's one thing to have a tech that works and have a tech that can have a strong impact in the real life, but it's another thing to make a business out of it and to have a commercial impact. So I think there is a lot of mentoring that's needed to structure your team, build your company, raise your first funds, and go get your first customers, which is the type of support that can be provided by government programs. And the second one, and of course, which is the elephant in the room, is funding, because our type of projects have, of course, a very strong societal and commercial impact, but they are longer to bring to the markets. And they can be more scary and complex for investors, because they are not the traditional B2B SaaS that is very clearly understood and fast to have this type of impact. So I think this type of government support, what they do is that they really bridge the funding gap between getting your tech out of the lab, developing your first prototype, and bring a first version of it to the market, where you're at the stage where you can get private fundings to accelerate your growth.
Fantastic, thank you, Camille. And another question for you, Bart. We're seeing major follow-on investment following EIC support. Why would you think this is?
First of all, it's time. So, as Camille said, we were bridging a gap where the traditional funding was, the 10 plus 2 years, and a lot in B2B SaaS, and this is a different kind of funding mechanism. It takes longer, the phases have a different perspective, but where I think that we're doing a fairly good job is that we help to de-risk it. The due diligence that we put in place is really gaining credibility. We spent a lot of effort in doing a thorough due diligence process, because it's of course deep tech oriented. And once that you have that credibility, we see that co-investors trust that due diligence. That's one part. I really like the fact that we do align it with EU priorities. We talked a lot about healthcare, we talked a lot about energy transition. We're now in the acceleration of digital, quantum, AI, and in the future probably resilience oriented. And so aligning with the European priorities, specifically now, I think that's helpful for a lot of people who want to get into the space. And then lastly is, of course, at a certain moment also the companies get market credibility. because when we started the program, it's now, let's say 4 years that we're head on. We started it 6-7 years ago. Initially, it was a new type of investing. There was a clear gap in the market, but we see over the years that the investment done yield really great results. Companies keep growing, companies take additional markets, and also that makes that others trust the vetting and the process that we have done. So that's the timing element, and I think we're just at the beginning of that process. I believe that more and more now we see that investors trust the process, and one of the things that will probably happen soon is that now it's an overall EIC kind of funding approach, but we see that the investors are looking more in depth. They're looking into advanced materials, they're looking at specific domains of healthcare. And so from that moment on, you get really very deep knowledge sharing, and that will only increase the trust in investing more, but certainly also fast.
Fantastic, thank you, Bart. And Bindi, back to you. The report explores what happens in the years following EIC support. And one of the things we're seeing a lot of is large-scale employment and revenue growth. Why do you think the EIC is important for deep tech companies to achieve this? And maybe to put it a bit differently, could these companies achieve this without EIC support?
I think if you look at the kind of programs that you've put in place in the EIC, so the the acceleration services, the network you've built around trusted investors, the STEP program and the follow-on rounds that Bart mentioned. I think all of that is being put in place to really surround these investors. I think the other thing is, just speaking purely from a VC mindset, these founders are getting more runway to achieve a higher valuation, to prove product market fit. And European investors, by their nature, tend to be a little bit more risk averse, and they want to see PMF. They want to see that first client, which some of these corporate introductions that come through EIC are helpful. So you're starting to see the runway, the extended runway. You're starting to see the introductions to corporates. You're starting to see more time to get product market fit and to prove it, enabling the investors to crowd in. So for me, the impact metric, this one I really like, 70 plus companies achieving valuations above 100 million, including 6 above 500 million euros. I wonder how many of those 70 companies were founded less than 10 years ago, and would those companies have been invested in by VC without the additional runway and the funding provided? I think that's a bit of research I'd love to learn more about. Gut feel, probably not. So I think, the EIC has made an impact. And I think the crowding in of the VCs, it's been a great start. I saw a panel yesterday at the summit, which I'm sure someone will talk about, where it was investors on stage talking about co-investing. And I think I'd love to see more of that. So I do believe it's definitely all in the right direction.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And back to you, Camille. The report shows an influx of support for deep tech companies in critical sectors such as quantum energy, AI and health tech. And as your company is both an AI and a health tech company, how do you think Europe can stay at the forefront of AI-driven healthcare?
Yes, indeed, at Scienta we're at a unique position where we combine both a very strong and quantified technology like artificial intelligence with more like human-based clinical medicine technology, and the idea is to be at the intersection of these two sciences to really innovate, and that's where I think our strength and the strength of other companies in the space is and lies. But if we talk about Europe specifically, I see personally 3 aspects that could help us staying at the forefront of innovation in this field. For me, the most important one that I noticed is really around fostering investor-friendly regulation. I was really pleased to see the last evolution and discussions around the EU AI Act, because it shows a will of the EIC and of the government to go towards a more entrepreneur-friendly approach and to help us innovate in a context where we don't have too much bureaucracy and more space to train and apply our models. But I think this is really key for us to stay competitive at a global level. Of course, the second one, and I think this is the one that we all talked about so far, is investments and the type of investment that we need to be competitive, not only in our local markets or at the regional level, but also at the global level. I think EIC has been doing a very good job with this funding continuum, funding every step of the process to bring a technology out of the lab to the market with every step that the entrepreneur journey can include. And I think that should be continued and pushed even further to make new companies emerge in the space. Maybe the third one that is interesting, at least to companies like Scienta, we are really global from scratch. Our market is international from the beginning. There is no topic about applying our technology to specific regulations. However, our gut feeling is that being from the get-go into the European market and being an European company instead of being a French company that then became European and then international would be a very strong support to be competitive again at the international level. So I don't have a very structured and strong recommendation around that, but I think that's the kind of regulation that would allow us to be seen as a European company from the get-go could support also the growth of Scienta and its companies like us. So I think this is, for me, the three pillars that could really strengthen and allow us to stay at the forefront of AI in healthcare, but other deep tech subjects as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Bart, we've touched on it already, the EIC Trusted Investors Network, which is quite a new initiative of the EIC, and it now has over 100 investors. Why do you think these investors would choose to become part of this close investor network of the EIC?
So indeed, as you said, the Trusted Investors Network is fairly new, and so the ambition that we had to set it up is to group investors more closely to the deep tech investments that we are looking at, because it was all quite scattered and it took quite some time. And as you said, we now grew into 100. And the benefit, of course, for us is that we can share the startups and the companies that we are looking at. But for them, it's also to get a quite early and fairly exclusive view at the companies that they can co-invest in. So I think that's one, that is getting access to a deal flow that is pre-vetted by the EIC. Secondly, what I see now is that it's getting quite collaborative. Initially, the Trusted Investors Network looked at all companies all the time, but now we see that there's already a couple of more segmented domains that we are looking at, and that will only increase. People will start saying, well, for our fund or the way we look at investment, these kind of companies or these kind of domains are going to be essential, and that will only increase the speed and I believe also the tickets. And then lastly, what it of course does, it aligns you strategically on the goal of these startups because they often fit into the larger European priorities. But even if we take a step back, a lot at the EIC Summit is about the future startup and scale-up strategy of the Commission. So it fits all into that. It basically helps us to create much more of a winning tech nation, which we need to believe, which we need to become. Especially now, what I see is a bit of regained trust by entrepreneurs, but also by investors. Hence, why it's good to have a trusted investor network, and maybe in the future it should also be a network of corporate venture builders, and it should also be a network of accelerators that all share best practices and accelerate elements. I believe we have all the elements in place. If we just need time to speed that up, and networks build the trust to be able to do that.
And Bindi, is there anything you'd like to see more of from the EIC?
Yeah, I think EIC's made a great start about, again, with what I go on about and what my business does. It's around really continuing to really deepen those connections between investor, government, corporate, and founders. And in particular, looking at the Trusted Investors Network. I think there's 100 investors managing the money and spending the time. I think really getting more embedded and really being seen as value added and a great source of deal flow for these investors. I think there's a bit of a way to go, so I want to see more of that. So really bolstering your reputation there. And then secondly, the collaboration with corporates. I've spent a lot of time working in the intersection of VC, corporate, and corporates in terms of as customers of our founders and the founders themselves. So really really bolstering that kind of connection as well. I think EIC is a good conduit, but it can be even better at that conduit, and the corporates know that they can come to someone like this organization for a source of deal flow for investment, for a source of companies to acquire, and for a source of companies to buy amazing and procure amazing innovations from. And so I think EIC is really well positioned to deepen that collaboration.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bindi. And our very last question is for you, Camille. The report shows that 30% of EIC-supported companies have female leaders.
Yay!
As a female leader yourself, what do you think of this figure?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think it's definitely encouraging to see this figure, especially in deep tech, which has been historically dominated by men. I think it shows progress, but it also highlights that we still have work to do. So initiatives like the Women Innovator Prize are excellent because they not only highlight the project, but I believe they really help us build new role models, which is what we need in this space. We need to move from the very normalized figure of men entrepreneur, that's the successful entrepreneur, and start to show what it could be like to have female leaders, how they would lead their business to economic success, but also to a different kind of success, I believe. So I think, in my opinion, what we really need to move the needle at this point is not only to continue this type of initiatives, but also to look at diversity, not only in the founding team, but into the whole ecosystem, from the boardrooms to investors to ecosystem. And that's why I'm very pleased to have people like Bindi around the table today, because for me, they are the ones that really have the power to support building these new role models and work with us entrepreneurs to really support female in the space and pave the way for women to thrive in the space.
Fantastic. What a wonderful response to end this podcast with. That's all we have time for today. If you listeners out there are interested in finding out more about the impact of the EIC, you can find the report on the EIC website. Many thanks to our panelists, Bart, Bindi and Camille, and many thanks to our listeners. Until next time.